South Sudan says RSF not responding to ceasefire extension call as RSF accuses the Sudanese army of attacking its bases. Protected convoys not provided for United Kingdom citizens in Sudan, Britain cites attacks. Plus, rebel attacks deepening displacement crisis in Congo's Ituri region. Welcome to the program once again. Many residents are taking advantage of relative calm in Khartoum and the neighboring city of Omdurman, also emerging from their homes to seek food and water, linking all the bakeries or the grocery stores after days of being trapped inside by the fighting between the army and the rival paramilitary group. But still, gunfire and explosions can be heard in the city, though residents say clashes are in more limited pockets, mainly around the military's headquarters and in the Republican Palace of the central area and round bases in the Omdurman across the Nile River. With the future of any truce very uncertain, many took to the opportunity to join tens of thousands who have streamed out of the capital in recent days, trying to get out of the crossfire between the forces of Sudan's two top generals. The generals' war for power since April the 15th this year has pushed the population to a near breaking point. Food has grown more difficult to obtain, electricity has been cut off across much of the capital and other cities, and many hospitals are shut down. Many Sudanese fear the army and its rival rapid support forces will escalate the battle once the international evacuations of foreigners that began Sunday is completed. Well, South Sudan has hit a roadblock in its effort to end the conflict. They say the head of the paramilitary rapid support forces has not responded to a proposal to extend the ceasefire to Sunday. The foreign minister, Deng Dong Deng, also reports that the general Hamdan Dagalo has also not answered calls for face-to-face talks. A statement from Sudan's army says its general leader, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has given his initial approval to this request. But the ceasefire, due to end at midnight local time between the Sudanese army and the RSF, has been strained by reports of continued fighting and shelling in parts of Sudan. And with South Sudan leading the mediation efforts in Sudan to extend the ceasefire, which is due to end tonight, the RSF have accused the Sudanese army of attacking one of their bases in Kafuri area in the Bahari city north of Khartoum with airstrikes and artillery. The accusation is coming at a time when the Sudanese army has accepted South Sudan President Salva Kiir's proposal for a face-to-face discussion, but the RSF is yet to answer that proposal. The Sudanese army has not commented on the accusations. This conflict between the RSF and the Sudan's army has triggered a rush to extract foreigners and diplomats and even the citizens there. But countries are racing against time, fearing the fragile ceasefire may collapse at any time.
Several countries have evacuated nationals by air, while some have gone via Port Sudan on the Red Sea, about 800 kilometers by road from Khartoum.
So there's going to be another crisis that no one has envisioned and no one knows how to deal with it. And I think the international community missed a golden chance when they evacuated the foreign nationals, that they could have gotten in some supplies, anything to tide things over. They didn't. So we are left with no security, no hope that these two men will actually cease all clashes or cease all, fighting. And we have no food security. So we're basically left to fend for ourselves with nothing.
Foreign countries have airlifted embassy staff out of Khartoum, the capital, after several attacks on diplomats, including the killing of an Egyptian attaché shot on his way to work. Some countries are also extracting their private citizens. On Tuesday, Britain launched a large-scale evacuation of its nationals on military flights from an airfield north of Khartoum. France and Germany said they had each evacuated more than 500 people of various nationalities.
Over the last few days, we have been doing extensive planning across government departments and with our international partners to take advantage of any improvement in the situation and begin the evacuation of British nationals in Sudan. I'm very pleased that a ceasefire has been announced by the leadership of the factions on the ground, and therefore we are initiating an evacuation plan. It is important to remember that ceasefires have been announced and have fallen apart in the past, so the situation remains dangerous, volatile and unpredictable. I've spoken either directly or through intermediaries with the leaders of the factions on the ground, calling for them to allow British nationals, dual nationals and minors to be evacuated, and we will continue to push for the maintenance of this ceasefire. Of course, it is impossible for us to predict how long this opportunity will last, and we're calling people forward in priority order based on their vulnerability.
The warfare that erupted between the army and the Rapid Support Forces, paramilitaries, on April 15th has turned residential areas into war zones, killing at least 459 people, wounding over 4,000 and cutting water, power and food in a nation already reliant on aid. Tens of thousands of people, including Sudanese and citizens from neighboring countries, have fled in the past few days to Egypt, Chad and South Sudan, despite instability and difficult living conditions there.
The United Kingdom will not offer coaches to help evacuees get to the airbase in Sudan. And that's according to the UK Foreign Minister James Cleverly. When asked why the UK had not provided coaches to shuttle evacuees to the exit point, as other countries, including Turkey, have done, Mr. Cleverly said the small number of attempted convoys had come under attack. He also added that it's not possible to give protected convoys from what could potentially have been a large number of locations. Over 300 United Nations staff members and their relatives who were based in Sudan arrived at the Nairobi airport last night, airlifted out after nearly 2 weeks of conflict between Sudan's army and the RSF. The crisis has sent growing number of refugees across Sudan's borders, with the UN Refugee Agency estimating 270,000 people could flee into South Sudan and Chad alone.
Finally out of harm's way and on Kenya's soil in Nairobi, UN staff heave a sigh of relief. The United Nations for Human Rights representative in Kenya, Caroline Van Buren, thanks the government for allowing their staff passage into the country.
On behalf of the UN, we would like to say a big thank you to the government of Kenya for allowing UN staff to be evacuated into Kenya. We will continue to work with the government to ensure that all of our colleagues who need to move from Sudan to Kenya will be able to enter Kenya.
The World Food Programme's Regional Director Michael Donford is also there to receive the new arrivals. He says the agency is starting to think about how to re-enter Sudan, but is first prioritizing securing their workers.
We're desperate for the ceasefire to hold, for the principles to ensure that the chaos that has ensued over the course of the last week ends and the situation starts to normalize. But we needed to bring our staff out. The situation continues to deteriorate, continues to get less and less secure, and it was essential that non-essential staff were brought out and the dependents. We're going to house them here for the coming days, and then ultimately we'll assess the situation. The World Food Programme is already starting to think through how do we re-enter.
Donford adds that even before the conflict began, Sudan was in need of huge humanitarian assistance, and unless there is a ceasefire, the need will continue to rise.
And away from the crisis in Sudan, 4 Kenyan Christian faithful died on Friday while being rescued from a house where they were found in an emaciated state due to a fasting season that started by a local pastor. The secular East African nation is dominated by the Christian religion, and cases of worshippers being misled by their pastors have cropped up sporadically in the past. Police are still investigating the case.
The 4 who perished in Kenya's latest case were amongst 15 members of the Good News International Church who authorities rescued in the coastal county of Kilifi.
We went there based on an information that there were some people who were cited by members of public having been starved somewhere and were just about to die. We rushed there and we were able to rescue about 15 people. And among the 15 people, 4 died as we were proceeding to hospital.
Police marked the locations of more than a dozen suspected graves in eastern Kenya, thought to contain the remains of the followers of the Christian cult, who believes that they would go to heaven if they starved themselves to death. The leader of the church, Paul Mackenzie, has been detained by police following a tip-off that also suggested the existence of shallow graves belonging to at least 31 of his followers, according to a police report.
2017 is when police got interested in this person. But I'll let you know, there are many other people we are following up, we are interested in, whom we believe are involved in similar issues. So there's a lot more happening, not just this person.
Kenya's Interior Minister Kithure Kindiki called for the group's leader to spend the rest of his life in prison, and that anyone who assisted him by digging graves or disposing of bodies should also face the harshest penalties under the law.
Still to come on Network Africa, we have the Kenyan journalist Cyrus Ombati to give us more on this crisis in Kenya. To bring you the details, please stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Let's now talk to Kenyan journalist Cyrus Ombati to give us more on the death of 4 Kenyan faithful that happened recently. Hello, Cyrus. Thank you very much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you.
What is the current situation now? Has anything more been discovered about this particular religious cult?
Well, as of today, this hour, the number of bodies which have been recovered is 103 bodies. That 4 people have been rescued from the excavation. 22 others have been arrested for participating in the whole saga. The pastor behind the whole thing is in custody so far, and his co-accused, or rather, his mentor, is called Mr. Ezekiel Odero, was arrested today. He's set to be appeared. He's taken to court tomorrow, so that he can also face charges of causing death. This is because part of his charge was found to have actually led to 5 other people who died at the charge and were taken to a local mortuary. So the authorities have been saying they are so much hard on these cult groups, the leaders, so that they can be able to take action on those who are behind the same.
A report suggests that this kind of thing is a common occurrence in Kenya. Probably some of things like this had happened in the past. Do you have any idea why?
Well, that's the question everyone is asking himself, because it's not the first time this thing has started. In I remember 2019, we had a similar situation where actually a Catholic priest was dismembered, his body was dismembered and eaten by some members who are in his church. Somewhere in central Kenya, he has called Tupi. Then authorities said they were trying to come up with rules and regulations to manage the whole situation. But because the Kenyan constitution has given the country or the church leaders a blanket check in a way, in the sense that everyone says that the issue of...
Oh, very sorry there, but probably we'll be able to get back to Cyrus Ombati for more on this. But let's go to other stories now. Drodro, which is a village in eastern Congo, is one of many in Ituri province's in Judu territory, and it's been seen a surge in attacks by the Cooperative for the Development of the Congo Armed Group, who around 550,000 people forced to flee their homes between the month of January and the month of March. Bridget, who declined to give her full name, was one of them. While now living the nearby Ro refugee camp, she recalls needing counseling and psychological support to recover from being forced from her home at gunpoint. Members of the Hema herding community started to abandon Drodro in the middle of March, ahead of a rumored advance of Codeco. The group, which claims to defend the interest of Lendu farmers, is one of the dozens of militias that have established Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo since the 1990s. All right, Cyrus is back. Cyrus Ombati from Nairobi, Kenya, to give us more on the occurrence in Kenya. So, Cyrus, thank you again. But we're talking about what must be happening there. Any idea why there's a reoccurrence of this kind of situation in Kenya and what's been done so far?
That's the question everyone is asking himself, why the massing of this culture group? Because since 2019, when we saw such kind of a behavior, there was a massing kind of those groups here. Then the authorities tried to come up with regulations to manage the whole situation. But then you find that the Constitution of Kenya gives a blanket check to many religious practices in the country, in the sense that it gives freedom to practice and subscribe to any kind of religion anybody likes. So even if somebody is arrested for such a thing, he goes to court and is given freedom. So these people are behind. I think they're taking advantage of ignorance of many people. I mean, the issue of religion is a moving issue which no one is able to explain why it's happening. Everyone is asking himself, why would somebody want to starve to death because he wants to go and meet Jesus? And yet the person who's telling you to do that is not himself starving.
But Sarah, what is the government saying about this? If this has been happening for some time now, what is the government saying about curbing incidents like this, or at least regulating movements like this, or even prosecuting those found culpable?
It's like the issue is gaining traction. It's now there's a debate in the country. Even the president has commented on the same. The minister in charge of Interior has commented on the same. They are saying they're going to be hard on these movements and they're going to come up with regulations to manage the whole church. The Catholic Church in Kenya, which is the biggest, we can say, in the country, has also voiced their issue, their concern about the issue. So they are saying there should be kind of regulations to manage these upcoming or new churches who are behind the whole thing, which is appalling to say.
And have there been reactions from the survivors of this cult? Has anyone said anything, one of those who survived it, maybe in the present or even in the past?
There are some who have talked, others are still adamant. They believe they're going to heaven in June. Those who have spoken, they are saying that they were asked to give money. Once they gave out money, they were told to sell all their belongings. Once they sold their belongings, they went to travel to Mombasa, then to Kilifi, where the whole was taking place. Then they were taken to a confinement. Now that place is around 70 kilometers away from the main airport in Malindi. There is a farm which this man bought, and he had so many houses which he was keeping these people, and he was telling them to starve until they die. Those who tried to run away, they were beaten up, and maybe they died and they were buried. There were bouncers there who are behind the whole thing, in the sense that once one arrives there, he is taken to a confinement until he dies. Those who are about to die, they have to die first, and then they are buried in a shallow grave in a row. That's what they were saying, actually. That's what they have confessed.
And a pastor has been arrested in connection with this, and maybe some arrests have been made. But what do you think will be done this time? Would it just be another arrest and probably they release them sometime? Because if there are strict measures taken, or if people actually pay for their crime, then this kind of things will not happen or will not continue to happen. What do you think will happen to this person who's been arrested now?
There are fears that there is no much which can be done to him, because everyone has a right to kind of bail. Then now everyone is airing is concerned that he will be released later on. He will be given freedom, and then he will continue with his own practices here and there. It's actually brought up so much debate on the issue. So I believe going forward, those concerned are going to come up with policies that are going to help managing the whole issue of occultism in the country and the region at large. But it's an issue that is sending a lot of shivers to many people in the country, to tell you.
All right. Thank you very much, Cyrus Ombati from Nairobi, Kenya, Kenyan journalist there. Thank you for your time and your contribution on Network Africa.
Thank you so much.
Well, this is where we draw the curtains on Network Africa for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawode.